This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about leaks around your pool, how to detect them, what to do when you have a leak, and some tips for the pool service pro that has a pool on their account that has an active leak. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. A lot of times leaks go undetected because the pool has an autofill, or you may think that it's evaporation and you're not really paying attention. When the leak really gets big is when you start to notice it, or if the autofill is turned off, you'll notice the leak, especially if the pool is not holding chlorine well and you have an autofill. It could be an indicator that there is a leak in the pool. And these leaks can go undetected. It won't be quite as obvious as the thumbnail for this podcast, but you can find the leaks usually based on the fact that if you do turn the autofill off and you're losing a lot more water than evaporation, you definitely probably have a leak. Now, there's an old bucket test that we do in the industry. It's pretty easy to do, and this is something that you can get pretty good results with. I like doing this usually when I suspect a leak and I want to make sure before I have the customer call in a leak detector to fix the problem. So the way this is done is you get a 5-gallon bucket. A 25-pound cow hypo bucket works fine, or if you don't have that, you can use a full tablet bucket if you needed to. But I prefer the smaller buckets. I used to use the old 25-pound sodium bromide buckets that I used to collect. But again, a 25-pound bucket of any kind of chemical is probably the ideal bucket size that I would use. You get that bucket, and what you do is I put a relatively good sized rock in there to make sure that it's not going to move from where I'm going to place it in the pool, which is the first step of the pool. So I'll place it on the first step of the pool, and then I'll fill it with water to match the actual water level that's in the pool at that moment. And you can do a couple of things extra, but I'll just start with this bucket test. And then inside the bucket, you get some electrical tape, and you want to mark that line inside the bucket so that you know that this is the water line that you put in that day. It matches the pool water line. Sometimes you could put a piece of electrical tape on the tile line itself just to kind of give yourself a visual how much water was actually lost at that point. Also, besides the bucket test, and this can be done in conjunction with the bucket test. And then what you want to do is turn off any autofill and tell the customer not to fill the pool. I would say give it 3 or 4 days. I don't really like going a whole week because things can happen and sometimes the customer may want to use their pool. But if you go about 3 days, you can get back there. So if you do the bucket test on a Tuesday, you get back there on a Friday. That's probably ideal. Or do it on a Friday, get back there on a Monday, however you want to do it. So what you're looking for with the results of the bucket test is that the water inside the bucket should be at the same level as the water in the pool after 3 days. So they should drop at the same level. Now, if the water in the bucket is higher by 1/2 inch or 1 inch than the pool water, that indicates there's a leak because the bucket is your constant. The bucket's not leaking, and the water in the bucket should be evaporating roughly at the same rate as the water in the pool. But if there's a leak, the water in the pool or the level of the pool water will be below the level of the water in the bucket, because again, the bucket is your constant. You have the water level in there, you have the pool water level that you measured that are exact or equal or close to exact as you can get, and then you have the level after 3 or 4 days. And this will be a good indicator of the size of the leak, of course, or if there is a leak at all. And if the water in the bucket and the water in the pool are at the same level as far as evaporation after the 3 or 4 day period, then there is no leak in the pool. Usually that indicates there's no leak in the pool. So the bucket test is your first line of defense, and it's really easy to do, and it's something you can do with, again, a large bucket. And they do have like a mini bucket test kit. It's called the mini bucket test pool leak detector. You can try that as well. But the bucket test for me is pretty fail-safe, and it's something that's been used in the industry for many, many years. If you notice cracks in the skimmer or cracks around the pool area, that could be where the source of the leak is at. I mean, it's pretty basic if it's an obvious crack in the plaster. I had a pool that I was doing, and they just remodeled this pool and spa. They spent a lot of money doing this, by the way, but they didn't hire a licensed contractor, which is kind of weird because they had a lot of money. They should have hired a licensed contractor, but they didn't. And this particular person, you can see right away, I saw right away that where the spa and pool came together, that there was actually a visible crack right by the joint or the area where those two had like a spillway and the spa elevated. And obviously that's where the leak was after the fact. And you can get little dye kits. You can buy them on Amazon. And these dye kits are pretty good. There's a vial, and you kind of just take it and you inject it kind of where you think the leak is. And if there's a water leak, that dye will be pulled into it. It's really cool. I've done it before with a skimmer crack. You can use food coloring too if you wanted to go the cheap route. Just go to the 99-cent store, Dollar Tree, and get some food coloring, and that works just as effectively. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. I think. But it's really cool when it actually works and you're like pretty amazed that this is a way to detect it. And the first time I did this, there was a skimmer crack and I was like, that's probably the source of the leak. I mean, it's obvious, but let me get the dye. And I had put it in there and I actually saw the dye get sucked in there and I was like, yeah, there's a leak there. So that's one thing you can do if you wanted to do a little investigating on your own to do that, to see if you can find a leak source. If it's an obvious kind of thing. Sometimes it's not obvious like that, where you don't see a crack in the skimmer or a crack, in the tile line. These things may not be as obvious, or the leak may not be as obvious, and therefore you have to call in a leak detector. Now here in my area of Los Angeles County, American Leak Detector is kind of like the default leak detector company a lot of people use. Now, they're super expensive. You're going to be shocked if you're a homeowner calling for a leak detector. You're probably figuring, well, yeah, they're going to charge me $200 or $250, more like $500 just to come out there and check it out and try to isolate it. Because there is some work involved in isolating. They pressure test the lines. They're checking for things. Now, I use a local person in my area in Los Angeles County that's really good at doing leak detection. If you can find a small mom and pop company that does it, you're going to save some money, and they may have a level of expertise that goes beyond, let's say, American Leak Detector. But American Leak Detector does also repair. So if it's at the skimmer, they'll replace the skimmer. It's interesting when I talk to the technician, because I had a kind of a misnomer, or there was a myth that I believe that 70% of the leaks are at the skimmer. Because if you think about it logically, when you see a pool being built, you see them doing all the gunite and all the other stuff around it. And then you have this like plastic skimmer that's like just exposed there with dirt around it. And I always thought, that's pretty fragile. I mean, that could probably be cracked during the construction pretty easily. And sometimes it is. But believe it or not, he told me that only about 30% of leaks are at the skimmer and the rest are in different places in the pool. I had thought it was like 70 or 80% of leaks were at the skimmer. So that's something that I learned talking to the technician that it's not always at the skimmer where you may think is a leak at the skimmer is somewhere else in the pool. Where I've seen leaks before, and some of the leaks that are really hard to fix are in the actual return lines underground, which is not super common, but I've had that happen before. We had a small earthquake here. I'm trying to think what year it was, but it was several years back, and it was a pretty good jolt in the area of where I was servicing accounts, and the customer noticed water leaking right after that. And sure enough, they had to take out all of the deck, all the cement deck around it, and the earthquake, it was an older pool, the earthquake had shifted something and it had hit the pipe and cracked it underground, and that's where the leak was. But not super common to be, in an underground area, because the plumbers put the pipes low enough. 18 inches, I think, is code here, below 18 inches. And then you have, they use really good plumbing usually, and they don't have that kind of problem. But there can be leaks in the return line, and those are really hard to find. Another area where there may be a leak, and it may be pretty obvious over by the equipment, even a small drip leak can cause the pool to lose quite a bit of water. So make sure that if there's anything leaking by the pump lid, or anything with any kind of water will cause the pool level to go down. It's pretty amazing how a small leak can actually cause the pool to lose so much water. So make sure that you don't have any leaks by the chlorinators, by the heaters, by the pumps. One area that you can't see generally sometimes is if there's a backwash line and it's connected directly into a drain or a sewer somewhere and is completely sealed off. And I found leaks here before where maybe the spider gasket or the push-pull piston doesn't close all the way and there's like a slight leak going through that line. And again, it's really hard to find this leak if it is going to maybe a P-trap on the side of the house. You have to go look around and walk and find this drip leak. Or if it's going directly into the ground and there's no line, external line you can look at, then you're going to have to cut the pipe and check that for a leak. It's the only way to double check that backwash leak if that's the case. And I've had this happen again if the push-pull piston has a worn out O-ring, or if there's a problem with the spider gasket, there will be a leak either small or significant at that backwash area. And typically you can see it because the pipe is usually cut right there and you can see where the water's going. Or again, if there's a P-trap, you can find that leak there. But the equipment area is another source for leaks, so keep an eye out for that. And any kind of small leaks you want to get fixed right away. I've seen a lot of leaks in spa jets. So the problem with the spa jets is that you have your larger PVC pipe, and then it's condensed down into a smaller PVC pipe so that you have that kind of force of the jets. And a lot of times the connection between the larger 1.5 or 2 inch PVC pipe down to 1 inch PVC pipe is where a leak will form. And so sometimes you'll turn off your pool, the spa will drain down below the return lines, and you're going to think right away, okay, it's a check valve. So you change the check valve, and that should solve the problem because that stops the water from going from the spa to the pool. The check valve is kind of like a stopgap or a way to stop the water from going with gravity back down the return lines. But if you have a leak in the spa jet, even if you change the check valve, you're going to have water, you're going to have the spa water lower. And so that's kind of how you find the leak in a spa return jet. Change the check valve. If it's still going down below the return jets, it's possible that there's a water leak and it's not the check valve. So I've seen that before. I've seen cracks in the tile line, especially if there's palm trees nearby the pool. The roots will pop through and pop tiles out, and that's an obvious place for a leak. You're going to see sometimes just a hairline crack in the grout. Other times you're going to see actual tiles popped off and a visible crack in the wall. And there's all kinds of other areas where you may have a leak, where you need a leak detector to discover it. But it's something that is the next level. You have your dye test. You have the bucket test, of course, first, I should say. Then you have a dye test to kind of try to isolate where the leak's at. And then you're going to have to call in a leak detector if you can't find it. And they'll pressure test the lines, and they'll use more sophisticated electronic devices to kind of find the leak for you. Now, if you're a pool pro and you wanted to do leak detection, which can be lucrative, it is time consuming, by the way. I should mention that you may be spending several hours at a pool to kind of figure this out. But there is a company called Leaktronics, and you can take their course. I'm here on their site. It's $1,980 to $5,200 to do a leak detection course. And of course, you would get equipment. And, if you look at the equipment they use, it's a pretty decent amount of equipment that you get for leak detecting. And it's something that you can do, and it's something you can learn. It's not rocket science to find the leak in a lot of cases, but it is time consuming, and it may be something you want to add to your service. It may be something you don't want to add to your service, depending on your time constraints. I always preach the fact that you want to keep your service in kind of a In-N-Out Burger style menu where you have just a few things that you offer. Because if you offer a huge menu like a mom and pop burger place, you're going to be all over the place, and you're not going to be an expert. You're going to be just a jack of all trades, and you may not have time to do everything that you want to do for your service business. But if you just do weekly service, you do some repairs, and you don't do acid washes, or you don't do green pool cleanups anymore, leak detecting may be something you want to add to your service. And Leaktronics is a company that will train you, and you can actually get the equipment and start doing leak detection on your own. And then you can subcontract out whatever needs to be done as far as the repair. Typically, you would want to find someone who works with a builder so that they have the expertise to kind of match things. American Leak Detector tries to do the best they can to match the deck when they replace a skimmer, or if they're going to cut up the cement, they try to match it, but they're not pretty much they're not pool builder contractors that can do a better job of matching. So sometimes it pays to have the leak detector company find the leak, and then you find someone locally that you've worked with before. A pool remodeler would be perfect. They'll send a crew out there and try to match the cement or the decking if they have to take it out and do the repair. So there is those options where you can actually just do leak detecting as a company and then let someone else go out there and do the repair. And if you do have a pool on your route that does have a leak, and you are having problems with the pool, which is pretty typical because if it's leaking water and you're filling it, the customer's filling it, it is diluting the chemicals in there, and it's going to make maintaining that pool much harder. So what I usually do when I have a pool that has an active leak and the customer is taking their sweet time to fix it, which is typical, nobody wants to spend $500 plus to get someone out there to even look for the leak. And then when they get the estimate to repair it, sometimes it's kind of one of those things where it floors them. They're like, wow, it's going to be this much money. I'll just keep filling the pool for now. So in that case, if you're in a situation where the customer is kind of dragging their feet and the leak hasn't been fixed, you could charge them for extra chemicals is what I usually do. So I'll get a 50-pound bucket of Cal Hypo. I'll charge them for that. I'll leave it at the pool. And I'll tell the customer, since there's a leak here and the chlorine is not holding well, I'm going to go ahead and add this to your pool every week. Now, if you're losing a lot of cyanuric acid, let's say that your cyanuric acid level is dropping pretty rapidly as well because the leak's fairly large, instead of getting the Cal Hypo bucket, you can get a 50-pound bucket of dichlor. Now, dichlor is about half cyanuric acid per pound. And so if you get a 50-pound bucket, you're going to be adding cyanuric acid to the pool, which may be helpful in certain situations. It may not be helpful in certain situations, but it may be helpful when you are losing cyanuric acid as well, which would probably happen if the leak is fairly large. It's kind of like doing a partial drain every week, and you may need to add cyanuric acid. So the easiest way to do it, instead of adding the cyanuric acid separately, is to get a 50-pound bucket of dichlor and then use that as the way you're going to raise chlorine in that pool each week when you're at the stop. And that will be adding cyanuric acid and chlorine to the pool. And it's kind of a pretty good stopgap when you have a pool with a leak and the customer is not addressing it. I think addressing the leak is really important, and sometimes it happens rapidly. But again, a lot of times it takes a while for the customer to get around to it, and you can absorb the chemical costs on your pool route for your business if it's something that's out of your control, like a leak. I also recommend a chlorine enhancer like a Pool RX, and then using the booster when necessary. I don't know if I would add borates in a pool with the leak because then you're going to have to recharge it. But the Pool RX is fine, or use enzymes and phosphates each week, whatever you can do to make the chlorine a little bit more effective in that pool. But sometimes you're losing 1 inch or 2 inches of water a week, and so the extra chemical charge is definitely necessary for the customer. And of course, you want to try to get them to be as proactive as possible, and paying for extra chemicals is one way they get the customer's attention and they'll be more apt to get the leak fixed when they're paying more for the pool service every week. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. You go to the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be 1,700 podcasts there for you to download. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every Monday through Friday, I post a new episode for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, again, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.